There's an old expression in a little town in Delaware called Claymont, Delaware, a little steel town. And they say, we're like poor relatives. We show up when we're invited and we stay longer than we should. So be careful, we may not go back.
President Biden may not be joking about staying overseas, given the utter disaster he's created here at home. A whopping 85% of the country says America is on the wrong track, and that includes 78% of Democrats. Apparently, President Biden is irritated by a lack of party enthusiasm when it comes to a potential second term for him. The New York Times reporting the president is, quote, irked by Democrats who won't take yes for an answer on 2024. The Times adding, quote, the president and his top aides have been stung by the questions about his plans, irritated at what they see as a lack of respect from their party and the press. But despite all the odds, Kamala Harris is trying to instill confidence in the sinking ship.
Joe Biden is running for re-election, and I will be his ticket mate. Full stop. Full stop. That's it.
And as the Democrats panic over their flailing 2024 prospects, the media thinks Hillary Clinton will be the one to bail them out. CNN has begun their push for two-time presidential loser to make another run at the White House. And Gayle King is practically begging Hillary to do it.
There's no scenario in 2024 that you would even remotely consider.
I can't imagine it. I really can't. But what I know. Well, but what I can imagine is staying as active and outspoken as I can.
She can't imagine it, Jesse.
Yeah.
She just can't. The two-time loser wants to go for it a third time.
So this Operation Joe Must Go has really picked up after the bike fiasco. People who were on the fence are now definitely starting to throw the guy a retirement party. But you're throwing someone a retirement party and he doesn't want to retire. It's like, Joe, we're going to have some balloons. What kind of cake do you want? And Joe's like, I'm not retiring. I don't want cake. Oh, you're going to have the vanilla. You're going to love it. And he's out. So it's more of a media coup than a Democratic Party coup, because you look at these questions. Dana Bash is asking who's running. Gayle King is asking. Stephen Colbert is asking AOC, are you doing this? They're doing it right in front of Joe's face because he's bad for business. The ratings are down. He's no fun to cover. I mean, you used to go to Martha's Vineyard. You used to go to Hawaii or Mar-a-Lago. What do you go to Delaware now to cover Joe Biden? No one wants to do that. They loved, or West Texas.
All right.
They loved covering Barack Obama. They loved covering Bill Clinton because those were young, charismatic guys that took the fight to Republicans day after day. Joe Biden doesn't lay any wood on the Republicans. He's fighting Putin harder than he's fighting the Republican Party. And to the media, Republicans are the enemy, and they need to be attacked 24/7. The media cannot stomach putting out poll after poll that shows their guy, who they dragged over the finish line, at 38%. You can see them getting physically ill on the air. And talk about the parent companies, AT&T, Comcast. They're looking at the market every single day. They've lost, what, 20%? Their stock prices are down. And now the donors aren't happy either, so this thing's almost done. Now the media has basically started the primary. The primary's begun. And now the primary is anybody but Bernie Sanders, because the media hates Bernie Sanders and half the Democratic Party hates him. So they're road testing AOC and Mayor Pete and Kamala, but everybody knows it's going to be a flop. So the only shot they have is to indict Donald Trump.
All right, Brian, I want you to take a listen to this sound of Stephen Colbert sucking up to AOC.
I know somebody who's going to turn 35 about a month before the election in 2024. And they represent New York's 14th. Is that job appealing to you at all?
I think that...
Theoretically.
Listen, I think that we need to focus on keeping a democracy.
So it's possible.
I don't know about all.
Go ahead, Brian.
Really? I mean, to me, she's the king. She's the queen of queens. That's it in her district, and to resonate nationally is a bridge too far. And I would add this: the worst thing President Biden did is have Ron Klain, or it was on volition, give so much credit to the squad. because he cares more about what the squad thinks than anything else. So whatever his instincts are, it's been swamped by what the squad thinks. So he'll never be in the middle. And what the squad thinks is really answering to a small swath of America, should have no shot in the general. What I think is interesting is from David Axelrod to James Clyburn, they're already talking about, in theory, what if Joe doesn't run again? It doesn't matter his age, doesn't matter him falling off a bike, if his results were better, if the economy was humming, if babies could actually have formula 3 times a day, if we didn't leave Afghanistan the way we did, if he wasn't over in the G7 reacting instead of leading the way we're seeing right now. I don't think the age, the gray hair, the moving slow, the gait would even matter. And I look back, I'm just writing this down now. So Ronald Reagan's up in age, younger than Joe Biden, but the people around him were so good. Jim Baker, don't have to worry about it. You know, he's got the thing under control. The Secretary of State is George Shultz. Donald Reagan, even though he clashed with the First Lady, extremely competent. Vice President of the United States is George H.W. Bush, 41. He put credible people around him. And even though that Ronald Reagan maybe was in slowing down a little, let historians decide, the people around him were so strong. The people around this president are not strong. Gavin Newsom taking out ads in Florida is noteworthy. Gavin Newsom hopping on Truth Social is noteworthy. I think Governor Pritzker doing everything to look dominant in Illinois is noteworthy. And the problem is that Joe Biden, if he won't step aside, Jesse, I think we start to see more and more Hunter stories. Hunter stories get some teeth, they get some traction, they end up in the New York Times, the Washington Post, where the truth, not fabricated like the Russian situation, the truth will make it too hard for him to run again.
In fact, I'm doing another Hunter Biden story for Fox Nation.
Yes,
but
I heard about it.
Harold, what I'd like to ask you is, so you've got this president who's pretty much, the whole country agrees he's a nightmare. Or that the country's headed in the wrong direction, and his job is to right that direction, right the course. I mean, what do? Do you just tell him not to run? I mean, who breaks the news to him?
So they have to hope for, first of all, it's good to be with you.
Again?
Yes, ma'am. They have to hope to be able to say what James Carville said in '96 when Clinton ran for re-election, when he asked the country, what do you not like, the peace or the prosperity? Right now, they don't have that. Carville came up with the best line in the first race, which was, it's the economy, stupid. This president, they need to focus on something in the middle there. If I were them, I think there's some comments that have been made around the table that I largely agree with. Some I don't necessarily think the whole country dislikes him. I think that there's a big part of the country, there's no doubt, Democrat and Republican, like we saw a poll where overwhelmingly, at least 8 out of 10 think we're on the wrong track. It's a minimum of 8 out of 10. You're right in that regard, Judge. If I were them, every Monday and Tuesday, I'd have the president in a city where some great crime initiative is happening, where some great education initiative is happening, and talk about ways in which we're going to not only flood the zone there, but help amplify this. 2, I'd build a wall and make it clear we have to if we're going to have a serious border policy. And as a president who goes down to the border, let that be the takeaway from his visit there. 3, reverse the Keystone Pipeline. And make it clear, look, we're at a moment, we're at a crisis. We can still pursue a green energy platform, but we have to be cognizant and realistic about where the country is and the prices that people are paying for the things they need most. Clinton lost the midterms in '94. I'm not saying Democrats will, but guess what? He won re-election in '96.
Right.
Stop talking about what people are saying and complaining about what people are saying about your first 2 years and start doing. Mental acuity, physical acuity, irrelevant if you have policy acuity. That's what I would be focused on if I were in the White House.
I agree with that, Dana, but you know what?
You said it better than I did.
But Dana, the
inspired me.
truth is that it doesn't seem the man has the initiative to engage in any of these policy discussions. I mean, already, who's got numbers lower than his, lower than Kamala's? So he can do all the things Harold's talking about, but is it going to matter?
Congress and the Supreme Court have lower, and the media have lower poll numbers than the president. Harold, what you're describing is something like the revenge of the body snatchers. None of that is going to happen. I mean, what you're just describing is something that you would do. And maybe you will be running in 2024.
That would be great.
That is not happening.
Are you running in 2024?
Yes, answer it now.
No.
Okay.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Okay. I've always thought that President Biden would use the post-midterm press conference to announce he's not running again. And we have it in the notes that I said it'll be like between the Monday and the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. Time to reflect on things, talk to his family, and get there. But at this point, the narrative is so loud that he's not running again, he might actually have to file to run for re-election before the midterms in order to stop this chatter. Or he's going to have some big political win. He doesn't have a political win going, and all the vultures are circling. The old vultures, Hillary Clinton, the new vultures, AOC, the current vultures, Kamala Harris. I just want to say one thing about that. You played that soundbite of her from CNN the other day. Just a couple of hours ago, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen. The vice president wanted to put out a clarification about those comments that she made on CNN, and that this is the quote she says she should have said. The president intends to run, and if he does, I will be his ticket mate. We will run together. What she said that day was Joe Biden is running for re-election, and I will be his ticket mate. So I'm looking at this going, what is the difference?
Versus is.
Yeah, so apparently there must have been some talk within the White House over the last few days going, well, how do we fix this? And the only way to fix it was for her to say, whoops.
What's broken?
I don't know. I
don't know what needs to be fixed.
But here, my question is, who tells him you can't run?
Susan Rice. She's the Obama person.
All right,
Sticks the knife right in him.
All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.